taking the event ahead, we have reached towards those eras of our event which are extremely interesting, which most of us find extremely interesting. Yes, you all guessed it right. We are talking about Renaissance and World War, the eras that are responsible for some major changes in the world. We all know Galileo, but do we know how difficult his life was because of his inventions? Or do we really know as to why Hitler hated Jews so much? No, we got you covered. So let's go ahead and watch the videos together.
The fall of Galileo. The period of Renaissance is considered as one of the most important periods in the history of Europe. Many famous phrases, like one of Bloody Mary, were also derived during this period. The Renaissance challenged the authority of the apex system in the whole of Europe, also known as the Pope in the Italy. Anyone who dared to go against the Pope were considered as heretic and were exiled from the country or kept under house arrest, where the individual will eventually die of thirst and hunger. Renaissance literally means change, revival, or rebirth. But this was not the case in Italy. The Pope was the head of the city and ruled even over the kings. It was the Pope who put forth the theory that the Earth is at the center of the universe and the other 8 planets, along with the Sun, rotated around it. Of course, there were no proof provided, as the Pope is the holy man of God and no one ever dared question him on this. This theory went on and on for a period of 2000 years. Nicholas Copernicus was the first one to challenge this theory, but it was his follower Galileo who took the brunt of it. After the death of Copernicus, it was Galileo who made remarkable achievements in the field of astronomy. He improvised the telescope that enabled him to see the night sky more clearly. Due to his latest improvements, he put forth the theory where he suggested that the Sun is at the center of the universe and the Earth, along with the 8 planets, rotated around it. He directly challenged the 2000-year-old authority of the Church with enough evidences to support his theory and clear his mentor's name. Just like the other revolutionaries, he was exiled. He was kept under house arrest, where he was denied food and water. He shouted out his theories to the whole world so that someone might believe him and remember him for his contributions in the field of astronomy. People started thinking that he has lost his mind, only hallucinating the things that were not there. He eventually died under the house arrest and was later proved right in his theories.
Anti-Semitism and Hitler. Ever heard a speech given by Hitler? He can make the toughest man on the earth cry with just his patriotic speeches. Tried to find out the reasons as to why he hated the Jews so much that he brutally killed them in broad daylight. During his childhood, he was best of friends with many Jews. In fact, his first girlfriend was a Jew herself. So why did this man hated them so much later in his life? He did not invent this hatred of Jews. Jews in Europe had been a victim of discrimination and persecution since the Middle Ages, and often they were for their religious reasons. Saw Jews' faith as an aberration that had to be squashed. Jews were forced to convert into another religion or else they were not allowed to practice many professions. Later in the 19th century, religion played a less important role. It was replaced by theories of different races and people. The idea that Jews belonged to a different community than the Germans was caught on. Even Jews who had converted to Christianity were still considered different because of their bloodline. The origin of Hitler's hatred of Jews is not clear. In his autobiography, Mein Kampf, he described his development into an anti Semite as the result of a long personal struggle. His aversion to everything Jewish came to fruition when he was living and working as a painter in Vienna. Most historians believe that Hitler came up with this explanation in hindsight. He would have used it to assure people who were not yet convinced of his ideas that they would eventually see the light. What we do know is that two Austrian politicians greatly influenced Hitler's thinking. The first was George Ritter von Schroner. He was a German nationalist. He believed that German-speaking regions of Austria and Hungary should be added to the German Empire. He also felt that Jews could never be full-fledged German citizens. The second was a Viennese mayor, Karl Lueger. Hitler learned how anti-Semitism and social reforms could be successful from him. In Mein Kampf, he has praised Lueger as the greatest German mayor of all times. When Hitler came to power in 1933, he put similar ideas into practice. When Germany surrendered in November 1918, Hitler was in a military hospital. His eyes had been hurt by a poisonous gas attack in Belgium. Confined to his sickbed, he heard the news of German surrender, which plunged him into a deep crisis. He wrote that everything began to go black again before his eyes. Stumbling, he groped his way back to the dormitory and dug his head in pillow and blankets. The German defeat was hard to swallow for many Germans and, of course, for Hitler. In nationalist, right-wing conservative circles, the stab in the back legend became popular. According to this myth, Germany did not lose the war on the battlefield, but through the betrayal at the home front. The Jews, Social Democrats, and Communists were held responsible. The prejudice about the role of the Jews in the war were false. Investigation carried out by the German government proved as much. 100,000 Germans and Austrian Jews had fought for their fatherland. Otto Frank, who had fought in the Battle of the Somme in 1960, was one of them. Hitler blamed the Jews for everything that was wrong with the world. Germany was weak and in decline due to the Jewish influence. According to Hitler, the Jews were after world dominance, and they would not hesitate to use all possible means, including capitalism. Communism was a Jewish conspiracy too, and as the larger part of the communist leaders were Jewish. Nevertheless, only a small proportion of the Jews were communist. This idea of Jewish communism was awful. Population and the prisoners of war were treated brutally by the Germans. Hitler viewed the world as an arena for the permanent struggle between the people. He divided the world population into higher and lower races. The Germans belonged to higher people and the Jews to the lower ones. Also had specific notions about other people. The Slavic people, for instance, were cast as inferior and had to be dominated by the others. Hitler felt that German people could only be strong if they were pure. As a result, People with hereditary diseases were considered as harmful ones. These also included people with physical and mental disabilities. Once the Nazis has come to power, these ideas led to forced sterilization and killing of many human beings. The idea that Hitler developed in 1920s remained more or less the same until his death in 1945. During the 1930s, he did everything he could to expel the Jews from the German society. Once the war had started, the Nazis resorted to mass murder. Nearly 6 million Jews were murdered during the Holocaust. The end.
So I hope you all enjoyed these videos. So coming to the next speaker for the day is Dr. Satvinder Madhuk. Talking about his education, Dr. Satvinder Madhuk has an MS degree in Information System in the year 2002 from Pace University. Talking about his experience, he is the Vice President Lead TS Infrastructure at JP Morgan Services India Private Limited since 2010 to present. He has been the Regional Head, Emerging Markets, IT Governance and Technology Risk Assurance at Barclays Bank since April 2008 to present. He has been Head IT Infrastructure and Service Delivery and Head PMO at Barclays Investment and Loans India Limited since April 2008 to May 2009. He has also been Associate Vice President at Apara Enterprise Solutions Private Limited since November 2007 to March 2008. Dr. Satvinder Madhuk, an IT practitioner with a transactional experience in informational technology, having worked in the United States and now in APEC. He has managed a full spectrum of managing people, process and technology and have come full circle in ensuring data security, data integrity and ensuring regulatory compliance. He is proficient in budgeting, vendor management, third-party engagements and controls, SLA management and end-to-end sourcing solutions with skill negotiations and prudent judgment. He is a skilled negotiator and helps managing large cross-functional teams across diverse technologies. Thank you so much, sir, for joining with us today all the way from Australia. We are extremely honored to have you. Over to you now.
Thank you, Chinmay. I think it's a great opportunity to be connected. I'm presently working out of Brisbane in Australia. Because of the COVID situation, I've just come back here home and I live here in Australia. So just as a small introduction, I'm an Australian as well as an American citizen, and I work out of India. And right now I'm domiciled and located in Brisbane in Australia. And I hope to come back sometime by middle of November. I should be back in India again once again. So I think it's a great opportunity to be able to talk to such a balanced set of people that we have in this conversation today. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a cue from what Lena did mention, and Lena and I are both colleagues working in the same team and in the same office. So I'm going to take a cue from her. I don't know if I'm going to be as good as what she's been able to accomplish and achieve. I'll try my best to do as good as I can. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about another civilization, and which is probably one of the most turning points of human civilization, and that is the Persian civilization. Among all the civilizations that have ever existed in the world, the Bible essentially talks about just two of them. When we track back the Bible goes back really to the Hebrew Bible as well as the Christian Bible. So when I'm going to talk of is the Hebrew Bible, which is basically before Lord Christ and John the Baptist. So in that time, the era that we presently look at of the biblical times, the two civilizations that find mention there are the Egyptian civilization, the land of the pharaohs, because pharaohs clearly find mention even in the first chapter of the Hebrew Bible, which is called as the book of Genesis. Pharaohs find mention there. And the second is it talks about a kingdom in Mesopotamia, which is Babylon in the Middle East, which is the Persian civilization. So these two civilizations must have somewhere existed just at the time when the Bible was being written, or probably they must have existed just before the Bible was actually mentioning about these two. Now, when we talk of the Persian civilization, I think the Persian civilization reached its pinnacle when one of its most famous kings called as Cyrus the Great ruled Persia. Now, Cyrus the Great has a very interesting history because he is the man who seems to have consolidated and has been the biggest landowner that the world has ever seen, where he owned land, all of Europe and all of Asia Minor, right up to Hindu Kush. He single-handedly owned that place. And that's where he's become the biggest zamidar of the world that has ever seen, and we've never had this repeated any time after that. Cyrus had a very interesting history behind him. The history goes is that with Cyrus, apparently, his grandfather, which is his mother's father, maternal grandfather, had a dream. In the dream, the maternal grandfather sees that there are certain snakes that are trying to coil around and strangle him. And because being a chieftain, he gets very worried. So he calls the astrologers of the day asking, what does this dream interpret for me? So the astrologers of the day tell him that this dream basically forecasts that the grandson that's going to be born to you, which is your daughter's son, is going to defeat you in the war and take over your kingdom. And this really troubles Cyrus's grandfather much before he was born. Coincidentally, at that time, his daughter was pregnant with a child. And as soon as the child is born, the grandfather takes away the child and gives it to one of his ministers wrapped in a red cloth, saying, take this child away, throw a stone on its head, and kill the child. So the minister takes the child outside the city walls, places the child on the ground, and lifts a big stone to smash the head of the newborn infant. When he hears a voice of a woman and a man crying, he drops the stone and has a look at them to find out who they are, and they turn out to be shepherds who had just lost their son. So the minister takes pity on the small infant and on the shepherd and hands over this child to the shepherd, says, take this away as far as you can, where you got to walk for 7 days and 7 nights, and there you can settle and never come back to this place. So the shepherd and the wife are very happy with the child. They think it's an act of God. They take the child and go away, walking 7 days and 7 nights, and start to settle at another place. Now, as they settle there, they bring up this child as their own. Now, one day, as the children are playing, one of the tribesmen's son cheats on the game. And in a fit of rage, the young Cyrus slaps his playmate. And slapping a chieftain's son was an absolute crime that nobody could have thought of. So apparently, people gather and they realize there's something unusual about this child. He's so decisive, extremely truthful, a man of pure personal integrity. Anyway, as years pass by, his grandfather's tax collectors one day come down and appear in front of his shepherd parents and ask for taxes. Again, a dispute arises with the taxmen, and Cyrus again picks up a fight with the tax collectors, saying that they are unfair in charging them taxes. Now, this infuriates the tax authorities, and they go back again and complain to the grandfather that there's a peculiar man who's fighting the tax authorities and calling them unfair. And the grandfather is a little puzzled, saying that who could be this man who is trying to challenge my authority? So he orders that the shepherd and his son must be brought. So the shepherd's son comes, which is Cyrus, and he talks with such clarity that he influences the king into believing that his tax collectors are actually misleading him. And the king is very puzzled. He asks him who you are. He says, my parents are shepherds. So the king gets the shepherd arrested and says, tell me who they are, because this boy is not born to these parents, because he is so truthful. He is so decisive. He is so straight in his conversation that he's been able to influence a king. He cannot be a shepherd's son. So the shepherd confesses, saying that a man gave me a child, and we walked 7 days and 7 nights, and for these many years we've been living there, and this is the history. So the king's suspicion becomes that this could be his grandson. So he calls the minister. So the minister also confesses, saying that yes, these are the same shepherd that whom I handed over this infant. So Cyrus gets, his grandfather asks Cyrus to be arrested, but the shepherd pleads with him, saying that we will go away walking 14 days and 14 nights and never be seen again, but please spare this child because he's our only hope in old age. So the king takes mercy, allows Cyrus to go with his shepherd parents, foster parents, and they walk 14 days and 14 nights and settle down far, far away from his grandfather's territory. Now, as he settles there, Cyrus slowly starts to form a tribe of his own. Now, as he forms the tribe of his own, he starts to influence the neighboring tribes to join him. Suddenly, in a few years' time, the young Cyrus at the age of 23 has a tribe strength of more than 5,000 people. He is very just, he is honest, very truthful, and never judgmental. And he allows all people to have a say in his government, in his tribal government. Now, this information reaches his grandfather, who's very, very wary now. He's upset. So he sends an army of 5,000 people along with his top generals to go fight the war and defeat Cyrus. But before the war starts, Cyrus has a conversation on the sense of justice, being non-judgmental, and truthfulness with the generals, and the generals defect and move towards Cyrus. So suddenly the grandfather is left without the army, without the generals, everybody on Cyrus's side. So he decides to fight on his own. He takes another 10,000 remaining soldiers and decides to fight one-on-one with Cyrus, his own grandson. In that war, his grandfather is defeated. Now, the rule of the law, which is the Hammurabi's law that was applied in the earlier days, was the grandfather needed to be beheaded. All his property would become Cyrus's property, and the grandfather's legacy would be over. But Cyrus never did anything like this. He was very forgiving. He took his grandfather and said, "You're going to be home imprisoned, but you're also going to be my advisor because I don't want your old age to go a waste. With so much of wealth of wisdom that you have, I want you to remain my advisor." So Cyrus moves back and starts to consolidate his territories. And soon, in less than 10 years, he conquers 1 million square miles of territory, all of Northern Europe, all of Asia, from Portugal to Hindu Kush, from Siberia to Greece. Everything comes under Cyrus's control. And he consolidates all of the Iranian tribes and decides to set up a new capital called as Persepolis, which is modern Babylon in Iraq. Now, Cyrus is the man that's been credited with allowing people to practice their own religion. He set the Jews free so that they could go back to Jerusalem and capture the Holy Land. He allowed people to have their own holidays. He respected every tribal custom, no matter from where they came. He in fact married twice and had two wives from two different tribes so that he could respect their culture. He would wear one traditional dress of every tribe every day so that no tribe would feel left out. Extremely benevolent. Set up the system of justice, which is today's modern justice. When you see the balance that you see that the blind hostess holds is a symbol taken from the Persian civilization, because he was a man of great justice. So he set up the first justice system in his empire, and he also was an absolutely brilliant strategist. He knew that Persepolis is sitting at the center of the east and west. So in that city, which is called as Persepolis, also called as Babylon, he set up his new city as the capital. Now in that particular city, traders from India and China used to come bringing gold dust, diamond dust, spices, coffee, tea, silk, and traditional medicines were brought to Persepolis. And their traders from the west, which is Greece and Egypt, used to bring arms, ammunition, and various different form of clothing to Persepolis, and their barter system used to happen. And there was a small tax that they had to pay to the city. So Persepolis really became the melting pot of cultural civilization, where people from the east met people with the west, and Persepolis became the most prosperous place on earth at a point. Now, as this trade was going on, at the same time, Cyrus decided to split up his empire into 12 different small kingdoms or governors. Now, each of the governor was expected to collect taxes, and taxes could be paid in only three forms: gold dust, grain, and milk. Those were the only three forms in which you could pay taxes. So the provinces that were rich in harvesting used to pay in grain. The nomadic tribes paid in milk, and the rich aristocracy paid in gold. And this entire thing was used by Cyrus to help improve people. He never used that money for himself. He kept a very modest upbringing, and he would live the life of a normal man. Cyrus's rule roughly continued for about 35 odd years. Now, in those 35 years, Persia became the world's largest empire. And because of what he did to the Jews, Cyrus also finds mention in the Bible as the savior of God. Now, without his help, the Jews would never have gone back to Jerusalem and defended it. So the greatness of Cyrus that we see today is unparalleled in any human history, of the world's biggest landowner being the most down-to-earth man, being extremely just, being extremely honest, high level of personal integrity, being non-judgmental, respects every opinion that came his way, and made sure that people respected him. And that's the reason why he is called Cyrus the Great. There hasn't been a king since then that can really match the traits that this man possessed. A lot of kings and emperors have come, but none what Cyrus could achieve. In fact, what Lena spoke about, Julius Caesar could only manage 2/3 of the territory that the Persian king had. So he was that large, a brilliant orator. So going back to the history of Cyrus, there are 6 qualities that he possessed. His communication was one of the most exceptional ones, where he could absolutely mesmerize people with his conversation, and that way make sure that people respected him and remained loyal to him. Second, his sense of justice has been unparalleled in the world as to how he would be so just to his people. Third, his own personal integrity was never called into question because he never used any money from his treasury on himself. Fourth, he was one of the most kindest person who accepted and respected diverse opinion. Fifth, he was extremely tolerant to all cultures and nationalities that came his way, and made sure that he also wanted to follow them so that he could show his respect to every culture. These qualities are very rare in today's world, people. I don't think so. There are many leaders that I can absolutely exemplify who depict these qualities. But there's one that comes to my mind. And he is also going to be finding mention in the annals of financial history whenever that is written. In the Hall of Fame of the world's financial markets, his name would always find mention. A man that I deeply respect, admire, and really would want to meticulously follow him for what he is the chairman of JP Morgan Chase, Jamie Dimon. Jamie Dimon has been declared as the most powerful banker of the world for 5 times in a row. A man of immense integrity, A man whose oratory skills cannot be matched by any banker that I've ever heard in my 20 plus years of banking career. A man whose modesty I deeply respect. And I'm going to give you an episode how it feels to personally my first-hand experience with him. 245 Park on 42nd Street in New York is where his office is. It's a penthouse office. He's got 100 personal staff. Floor number 43, 44, and 45 is where his office is. And that floor is a restricted floor. You need to have biometric access to go to that floor, or you must be invited. One morning I was standing, getting to the office. There are only 3 elevators in that lift, in that particular building. I arrived at 8:15 a.m. and like everybody else was standing in the line to get into the elevator. And I see a black color Mercedes just come at the gate. And the man that got down of it was Jamie Dimon himself, and he was driving it. The world's most powerful banker driving it. As he allowed the car to be valet parked, he spoke to the doorkeeper. The doorman saluted him, spoke to him for a couple of minutes, and then I kept waiting for him to see if he's going to bypass the line and just go and get into one of the lifts. But he did nothing. He stood in the same line, 3 places behind me. And as our turn came, as out of courtesy, I said, you may want to go first. And you know what he said? He said, no, you were ahead of me and I can't disadvantage you just because I came in late. Why should I disadvantage you? You should be going ahead of me. Step into the lift. I stepped in. 4 more people, including him, joined me. In that elevator, he asked me, he said, where are you from? Have you come from India? I said, yes. He said, good to see you here. If there's anything that I can do to make your stay more comfortable, let my assistants know and we are happy to help you. And have a good stay here in India and welcome to JP Morgan Chase. And thank you for choosing to work in JP Morgan. I have never forgotten those words in my life. The world's most powerful banker telling a small employee like me that he's thanking me for being an employee of JP Morgan Chase is an absolute privilege that I would never forget in my life. I've seen his oratory skills. I've seen him how he operates. He led the bank through the 2008 crisis. Never ever would you hear of a fraud happening there. His personal integrity is absolutely top notch, and his communication skills, many like us aspire, but few like him possess. So he's a man that I relate to Cyrus the Great, managing an empire. Now, just to give a perspective of that, of how big JP Morgan is, the total assets under management is equal to 97 countries' GDP put together is what Jamie Dimon manages as assets. The total transactions that occur in the bank every day is about $650 billion. The profits that we make every quarter is almost 4% of India's GDP. That's just the profits. And the financing that they do is valued more than India's total GDP, annual GDP of 2 trillion. So he must truly be Cyrus the Great for me personally. In the financial markets, he's truly a czar, a financial czar and a wizard. And you know what? I'll give you another surprising aspect of him. He's a lawyer by profession and not a financial accountant. But he knows the art of managing people that are better than him. And that's an art that I could never forget in my life. He also does not have people that surround him by saying yes men. He doesn't like yes men because he is a man who wants to have different opinions. And that's the reason why survey after survey come to employees asking them to give their opinion about what they think that the bank should be doing and how they should be doing. And pretty much I can tell you people with 837 odd people in my team today, 27 nationalities, 14 different cities where I work with my team working. I pretty much try to see if I can implement all of those and practice the way he says that. And it's been an absolute privilege working for JP Morgan Chase. And I don't think so I can find a better leader to express what Cyrus the Great stood for. Exacting qualities is what JP Dimon reflects. But that said, I think one of the important lessons that you learn in your life is never ever to hire people of your variety. You always need people that are different than you. And especially have adversaries with you because they will continue to caution you, stop you at every step and force you to think so that you don't go wrong. Never ever fear the adversaries. Always keep them close to you. I'm going to start off with a very small story that I picked up of late. About 1500 years ago, there's a story written in Maithili language called as Rakshasa. Now, Rakshasa is not the demons that we look at in our gods or the Puranic history. Rakshasa was actually one of the prime ministers that worked in a kingdom in Taxila, which is modern Bihar. It is said that there was a king called as Nanda, whose prime minister was Chanakya. Now, Chanakya used to advise Nanda, and a few years later, Alexander the Great invaded India. Chanakya asked Nanda that you need to fight this man, white man, because otherwise he will gobble you up. And soon a dispute arose between Nanda as well as Chanakya, and they wouldn't agree on this. So Chanakya was insulted by Nanda in the court, and Chanakya leaves the court and promises the king that I will one day create a Chakravarti Raja who will not only defeat Alexander, but will also defeat you, Nanda. Nanda laughs it off. Chanakya leaves the kingdom, and to his good luck, he finds a man that can become truly worthy of that empire, Chandragupta. So Chandragupta sets up an empire and Chanakya becomes his prime minister, and Nanda replaces Chanakya with a man called as Rakshasa. Rakshasa is fiercely loyal to Nanda. So Chanakya hasn't forgotten the fact that he was insulted in that court and he was waiting to take a revenge. So he instigates Chandragupta saying that you need to fight Nanda for my sake. But the problem is until Rakshasa is there, nobody can touch Nanda. So Chanakya tries to bribe Rakshasa, he would say no. He tried to trap him, still say no. Tried to do everything humanly possible. Rakshasa says, I will never leave Nanda, I will die with him. So a battle happens. In that battle, Nanda is defeated by Chandragupta Maurya. Now, the question comes, what do we do with the prime minister and the king? Nanda is beheaded, so Nanda is gone. Next, the sword is to fall on Rakshasa, and Chanakya stops Chandragupta Maurya and says, no, you're not going to kill Rakshasa. He said, but ye to Drohi Raja ka Pradhan Mantri hai. This man must go. Chandragupta says, no, stop. This man will be the new prime minister. And Chandragupta Maurya is taken aback. He says, but why would I make my enemy's prime minister as my own prime minister? He says, you need him. Because all his life, he's going to continue to oppose you. And the moment he opposes you, he will make you to think, are you doing the right thing? Are you actually doing the right thing? And thereby, he'll prevent you from making blunders that would ruin your kingdom. So I ask you, make him the prime minister. And that's how Rakshasa becomes the most well-meant critique of Chandragupta Maurya, but at the same time is also his prime minister. Moral of the story is you need to take people along, no matter what their opinion is. Don't discard them. So these are some of the management lessons that you learn from Indian history, global history, and you relate it back to people who possess similar virtues and qualities by which they have also become equally great and big in the annals of history at some stage. So I think these were some of the examples that I wanted to share with some of you as to how, if we forget history, we will repeat history. And that's one reason why, to me, the Vedas, the Shastras, and the history fascinate me, because we continue as humankind to make the same mistakes again, and we've got similar consequences few thousand years apart because we don't remember history. And I'm a big student and a fan of history for the rest of my life. Chinmay, it's all yours, Chinmay. If anybody has got any questions, I'm happy to answer. But these were some of the thoughts that I wanted to share.
Good afternoon, Dr. Madhuk.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Professor.
Yeah, so it has been an extreme delight to hear you. First and foremost, I think your examples were highly inspirational. And I would want to agree with you, in fact, that if we do not learn from history, we end up repeating the mistakes that the others have committed. So it's always useful to learn out of the mistakes and never to repeat them again. So I think that's a beautiful takeaway from whatever you have said. Additionally, the way in which you have inspired the youngsters to take forward the examples, the live examples of people who have already learned from history. I think that's an important thing that has to be kept in mind. And what needs to be understood very clearly by all of us, including people like us, I mean, is the fact that we need to add to history. So our role has to be seen in terms of contributing further, contributing ahead. So if somebody has left ideas and thoughts at a particular level, I think the challenge lies in picking it up from there and exciting ourselves and motivating ourselves internally to move across to the next level and take that thought further. So learning from history and taking it forward. I think these are the beautiful things that you have expressed. So thanks a lot on behalf of Aditya Institute of Management Studies and Research for being here to spare your valuable time. I have two questions.
Yes,
if you
please.
permit me, right?
Absolutely. Go ahead.
Yeah. So the first question is, since you have spent a long number of years staying in a different country, Australia, Brisbane in specific, I mean, it's a beautiful city, of course, I have been there, but I mean, the history and the culture that the Australians preserve, I've seen them doing it in a beautiful way. I mean, how would you compare it with the way in which we preserve our history here in India?
Thank you. I think it's a very valid question, and I'll give you a personal episode of this. My father comes from the armed forces. He spent 32 years of his life defending the nation, and he's been a part of para and of the special operations forces. And we've seen virtually my mother live on knife's edge for 30 years because she never knew if her husband is going to come back in the evening. I mean, that's the sort of life we've lived. I found more Indian Army's history in the Australian War Memorial than I found anywhere in India. It is so well preserved. So if I go to the Australian War Memorial in Canberra, every Indian soldier that fought under the British finds a mention in the Australian War Memorial in Canberra.
Excellent.
Which is extremely unusual, extremely unusual. And when I came here, I was taken aback to see that history. And I spent almost 3 days trying to go through that history to understand it. And I think here we have people that are allowed to express diverse opinions. And that's what enriches it, because then the facts come out and people debate on the facts and then they bring it up as history, and it's very well preserved here. That's what I would say from my experience in the Australian War Memorial in Canberra. And I'm a big ardent fan of it. And whenever I fade away from the corporate world, I've always told Dina that one of the places I would always want to be is to be in Canberra and go through that history again and again, because there's so much that we can learn of how our brave soldiers of the Indian Army fought first under the British and then the post-history of post-independence history. I think it's a bravery that very few countries can actually even think about. I mean, if you look at the 5 top battles of the world, Professor,
yeah,
where the human bravery has been mentioned as being unparalleled, that's the second most bravest episode is the fight of the Saragadi by the 26th Sikh Regiment in Saragadi, where just 27 Sikh soldiers of the Punjab Regiment defended that fort for 5 days against 21,000 Afghan troops. That's an unparalleled feat. And the Queen has actually signed off on their obituaries. All the 27 people got Victoria Cross. And she is mentioned on that inscription. Whichever army in the world has got Sikhs, that army can never lose a war. And India has never lost a war since.
Yeah, incredible. I mean, salute to those soldiers and
Absolutely.
to the stories which are being carried forward by the other countries as well. I mean,
Absolutely.
it's really appreciable to see the way the other countries are able to appreciate the courage displayed by the Sikh regiment. I mean,
Absolutely.
I've stayed in Punjab for a good number of years, 12 years of my life, and I can also tell you the same. The way I've seen, you know, the Sikhs work, their culture, whether it is agriculture or it is defense, I mean, the passion that they bring to the table is incredible. Totally.
Absolutely.
So, I mean, we
Absolutely.
have a lot to learn out of that entire experience. So, it may not be war all the time. So, my second question is a little away from war now. If you permit me, I can ask
Yep,
this question. Yeah.
absolutely.
See, when we talk about recruitments, this is a little away from history, but then it does have a bearing on history. Uh, the recruiters in Australia often are found saying that I would like to pick on the resume of an individual who has made a mistake in life and who has failed, rather than picking on resumes of people who have always shown a success story, right? So, I mean, does that have any bearing on their cultural upbringing? I mean, that was my question.
The answer is no. A lot of the companies today look forward to people who have failed and then made it, because failure teaches you more than success. So you're more sensitive, you're more mature, you are more risk averse, and you're more balanced because you've learned your lessons well. And that way you would never commit those mistakes again. And it makes the companies more confident that you've already passed your mistakes and blunders. And now you're at a point in time where you're only going to be succeeding. So it's a mindset that people have here. And I certainly, for one, I'm one of those that I'm not interested in people telling me that if I'm IIT, BIT, KIT, MIT, it doesn't worry me. I'm okay even if that person is from Jalna, Aurangabad, Beed, Parbani, wherever, Vasai, Virar, doesn't matter. As long as that person has the courage to speak the truth, shows integrity saying that, yes, Satvinder, I did fail, but you know what? Here are the 3 lessons I learned out of it, and I'm never going to allow that opportunity to go waste. I think it shows me his personal or her personal integrity. It shows that the lessons have been well learned, and it shows the courage to stand up to say this is, I think, is a big attribute that every person should possess. So that's the reason why in most, not just in Australia, but in most Western countries, you find this.
True, true. So thanks a lot for sharing your insights, your valuable inputs. I think I would like to thank you by just showing this to you because I know
Thank
you're
you.
coming in mid-November. This is from our end.
Thank you.
So we are
Thank you.
definitely going to meet you physically and hand it over to you personally. It
Okay.
has been an immense pleasure to have you here today because this afternoon, I think, owes its brilliance to you now. I think
Thank
you
you.
have wound up the entire conclave on a very high note. So thank you very much for inspiring all of us.
Professor, it's always a pleasure to be a part of your management school, and whatever it takes us for Lena and I to be a part of this to help each student have a brilliant career like what we've had, I think it would be a blessing for us to be able to help us. I help every student of this school, and we would love to partner together as one, and we would help anybody and everybody that comes our way because we've seen what it means to be successful, and we want to help more people be successful that way, and especially the young talent that's coming up. We would love to help them in making successful careers for them as well. So thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you to both of you once again.
Thanks.
Now that you are talking about nurturing talent, I think we have a talent which we are wanting to share with all of you. So I'm now going to hand over to Chinmay to take it
Yep.
ahead. Yeah,
Thank you.
so all over to you, Chinmay. Thank you.
Thank you so much, ma'am, and thank you so much, sir, for such an insightful session. So here's a quick notification alert for everyone. The feedback link has been sent to all of you all. So please access it so you all can receive the e-certificate on the registered email ID. With that being said, we would also like to notify you all that a fun musical surprise is waiting your way. So we are looking forward for all of you to be a part of it. Now, I would like to take the event further and I would like to call upon our director, Dr. Sunita Srivastava, to offer vote of thanks and conclude this insightful session.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Chinmay. I think we have had a wonderful day today. It was not just about the historical leaders that were talked about. It was not about historical situations. I think right from the start, when we heard Dr. Neil Sequeira, he talked about the healthcare sector and the way in which that industry is also taking away learnings from history. I think prevention is better than cure. That is the summary of what he was wanting to bring up. So that is how we started the day. We went ahead with Chanakya Niti, Arth Shastra. as the second session, which in itself spoke about the great warriors. Mr. Rajesh Kamath was able to give us a snapshot of the way in which the courageous leaders in Indian history have set examples for the world to follow. And the way he was so passionate about delivering, economics and management to be learned through Chanakya Niti, I think all of us would have felt motivated to read more and more about it. In the afternoon, we had Professor Leena Dadlani kickstarting the event with wonderful examples. And I think, I have already complimented her for being a brilliant storyteller. I think her stories were so exciting and fascinating that I'm sure everybody learned a lot from that. Dr. Madhuk, I think your charisma, your charm is so huge and great that it actually cannot leave anybody without mesmerizing people around you. So thanks so much for that, because it was really delightful to hear everything that you spoke about and the way in which you answered the questions that I had for you. I think I'm extremely grateful to you for that additionally. So I think all the four speakers have added a lot of worth and value to our learnings. I must, on behalf of Mr. Shubha Vilas, who was supposed to be our opening speaker, just apologize for the technical problems that he was experiencing. Nevertheless, he has actually shot a video and sent it to us. We are going to put it up on our Facebook page, and I am requesting all the viewers not to miss that out, because he's an equally powerful and influential speaker. So I think with this, we end today's conclave, and I must say that not just insights and learnings, it has been a day when we have also experienced the talent from our students, the talent which was visible through the videos, which were totally customized to each segment of whatever was getting covered. My gratitude to all these wonderful students of the HR Club who have actually put their ideas together, put their thoughts together. They have been working for a very long time. And above all, I have to thank the mentor for the HR Club, Professor Vritti Parekh, who has actually been the main motivation behind the entire event. She has been encouraging the students. She's the one who discussed this idea with me a couple of weeks ago. And I think she has been there all through in terms of guiding these students. I would also like to extend my gratitude to all the other members within the HR department at the Institute, Dr. Vinima Gambhir, Ms. Sujata Salvi. These are people who have been working tirelessly to try and make today's event a great success. Beyond that, my gratitude to one of the most important pillars at the Institute, and that is the director of Aditya School of Business Management, Dr. Manoj Bhatia sir. Dr. Bhatia sir has always been an inspiration to all of us, and by supporting this event and by being there with the entire HR club at all points in time, he has shown his leadership abilities to be able to take forward an event like this. My thanks and gratitude to the most important person behind everything, and that is Shri Ashish Mishra ji, the trustee of Aditya Group of Institutions. He is one person who is ever involved in guiding us, in leading us towards achieving, I think, new benchmarks. The very fact that the HR Club was able to dare to take a topic of this kind, which in today's context may not seem to be very impressive, but he is the one who encourages new kinds of thinking processes, and therefore my utmost gratitude to Shri Ashish Mishra ji. Our chairman and founder trustee, Shri Harish Chandra Mishra ji, our guiding force on all occasions, my gratitude to him as well. I would like to also express my gratitude to the IT team, because without the IT team, I don't think we could have put this act together. Professor Parag, Professor Pradeep Joshi, the entire team who is putting together this event even now, those people who have been here since early morning, and I think these people are the people who would receive my appreciation, my utmost appreciation for the efforts that they have been putting in. As a matter of fact, it is the entire team of Aditya School of Business Management and Aditya Institute of Management Studies and Research, who have combined their efforts together. All the faculty members, whether it is from marketing, it is from finance, information technology, or operations. Everybody has joined hands together, and it is a collaborative team effort that we have seen together. So I think with this gratitude that I would like to express to all my colleagues, all the staff members, the administrative staff headed by Seema Madam, wherein Seema Madam, she's always there as a pillar of strength for us. She's always available whenever we get stuck anywhere. I think these are people who not just deserve appreciation, but they deserve compliments from all the viewers who are witnessing this program at this point in time. And last but not the least, my viewers. My thanks to all the corporate friends, all the faculty friends from the other institutions, and all the wonderful students who have joined today's program. So with this, I sign off on behalf of Aditya Institute of Management Studies and Research. Thank you very much.